Welcome to another edition of Try Knoxville. Mike Roberts along with you. Now, craziness going on right now with the COVID virus, but we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a few positive things. Not that it's positive that this gentleman is leaving, but it's all the stuff he's done since he's been here has been positive, and why it's good to try Knoxville out. Dan Lasada, the chief of police for Knoxville for at least another, 2 months?
About 2 months.
Yeah, and you came here in 2004?
Five.
I was close. Well, maybe the interview was 4. I can seem right. 4 rings a bell for some reason. But anyway, before we talk about what you've done with Knoxville, I want to go way back.
Yeah, I'm 60 now, so you can go that far.
I can go that far. Let's talk about your childhood, because I've had the privilege of meeting your folks. Great people.
Yep.
And so let's talk about where you were born and how things got started for Dan Lasada.
Oh, I was actually born in New Jersey.
Okay.
Both my parents were born in New York City, so I'm an East Coast family. When I was 6 years old, we moved from New Jersey to upstate New York, outside of Syracuse, New York, where my father worked for a pharmaceutical company. That's where I grew up mostly. I was there throughout high school, and then for college, I went to college in Rochester, New York.
Okay.
Graduated college in 1982 with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and started looking for jobs in law enforcement because that's where my interest was.
Dad was in pharmaceuticals, but you went law enforcement ways.
Well, and my mother was a registered nurse.
Right.
Basically, I was looking for something to do service-wise. And originally, I was thinking military, but that did not go very well with my parents. They didn't think that was a good idea for me.
Sure.
So they encouraged me to find something else, and along those same lines, law enforcement was there. So that's where my interest came from. I should say that I have an interesting family history.
Mm-hmm.
Lasada is a Spanish name. My grandparents were born in Spain.
Okay.
Both my father's parents. My mother's family is Italian, and we're very well connected in the mob.
Okay.
We've had family members go to prison for different things over the years,
Sure.
including allegedly one for murder for hire.
I'll bet your background checks on your forms when you're filling out job applications was pretty amazing.
Luckily I never had to fill out a federal application, because those are the ones that would get me.
Yeah.
The local ones really don't care about your grandparents or your great uncles or something past there.
Sure.
So it wasn't too bad. But it was interesting. So I got into law enforcement. I went to criminal justice. I do have an older brother. He's 2 years older than me, and a sister that's 4 years younger. And about the time I started going to college, my brother decided to go into the military.
Okay.
But he wanted to go into the military reserves. So he went into the military reserves as an MP. When he got out of that, he ended up finding a job in law enforcement in the small towns. And so he was also in law enforcement for a while. Now he's actually an instructor or a program manager, as he calls it.
Right. You have high-tech names there.
Yes, for the North Carolina version of Iowa Law Enforcement Academy.
Okay.
So he supervises training for all North Carolina police officers now.
Younger or older brother?
He's 2 years older.
2 years older. Okay. Yeah. I can remember what you said on that deal. So did he try to guide you as far as what you were doing, or you didn't talk to each other? No, never. Yeah.
We're brothers,
Exactly.
We're always competing with each other. But I don't know where he got the idea of going to law enforcement. But as I said, I was interested in the military, and my parents didn't think that was a good idea. So I ended up going to law enforcement, which I thought was a similar career.
You got your bachelor's. What was the first step after you got your bachelor's?
Okay, I started looking for jobs, and of course, no one knows this, but in 1982, when I got out of college, in the northeastern United States, the cities of Boston and New York City were having major budget issues, and between those two cities and others in the area, about 3,000 to 5,000 cops were laid off.
Okay.
So every time I applied for a job in New York or in my home area, in law enforcement, I was the one applicant that didn't have any experience.
Right.
I was competing against people that did. So I wasn't getting any offers. I even tested for the New York State Patrol, or New York State Police, as they call it.
Mm-hmm.
And on a 100-point test, I scored 103 because I get a minority, 5 points for being a minority,
Sure.
Hispanic. I didn't get an invitation to interview.
Wow.
Even testing that high. That was interesting. So I started looking nationwide, and I had friends that had gone to school at KU in Kansas, and I saw an opportunity for a job in Liberal, Kansas, which was the extreme southwest corner of the state.
I stayed in there last August on the way to Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah.
I tell everyone it's a great town to be from, not at.
Yeah.
But I got an offer from there, and I went out for an interview, and they offered me the position. At the time, Liberal was a city of about 12,000. In 1982, they were offering me a starting pay of $14,000 a year.
You were rich.
Yeah, especially when you considered most law enforcement agencies at the time were paying $12,000 a year or less.
Right.
So it was good money.
Yeah.
So, silly me, I accepted the job and moved halfway across the country and started working in Liberal, Kansas.
What did your folks think about moving half across country?
They didn't like it a lot,
Right.
but they accepted it knowing that it was for the good. To this day, my father still gives me a hard time about being on the wrong side of the Mississippi River.
I like it. And knowing your dad, the few conversations I've had with him, I can see him doing that too. So
yeah, he keeps telling me it's my mother who doesn't like me being on the wrong side of the Mississippi, but he's always the one that brings it up.
of course, his job. So you landed in Kansas.
And so I was in Kansas for 8 years, and Liberal was a great town. I did a lot in a very short time. I think I had 8 or 10 homicide arrests.
Wow.
I was a canine handler. I handled a drug dog there. I was a DARE instructor. I was a field training officer. I did all kinds of stuff in a very short period of time. And I also met the woman that became my wife, now my ex-wife.
It happens.
It happens.
Yeah.
So we met down there, and I got married, and I had a child. And then it was time for me to get out of there. You know, my daughter was getting ready to start high school, or excuse me, she was getting ready to start grade school.
Right.
And didn't want her to go to grade school in that area. So we started looking around, and I got a job offer in Hastings, Nebraska.
Okay.
Hastings in central Nebraska at the time was a city of 24,000. And it was a nice place. So I moved up there, and it was very strange. I remember early on in the job, working with a training officer because I had to go back through training. And the training officer was talking about how busy the department was. I asked him, when do we get busy? He said, we are. You don't know busy.
Compared to Liberal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Liberal, as I said, it was a city of 12,000. The year I left, we had 12 homicides.
Right.
And so I went to Hastings, Nebraska, which was a very low-key town, very mild. We had issues, and we had things over the years, but nothing like Liberal.
Right.
But what became interesting for me, and why this is important, is after I'd been there a few months, an opportunity for promotion came up. And my chief told me that I should apply for the promotional position. I said, no, you haven't been here long enough. He says, no, all your experience from Kansas qualifies.
Okay.
So I took a testing for the captain's position. So jumping from police officer to captain. And I finished number 1 on the test. Then I went into an interview with the city manager who was going to make the final decision.
Right.
I told her, don't promote me. I said, I haven't been here long enough. You promote me, you're going to really torque off the other officers. They don't know anything about my history. So your best decision is not to promote me now.
He essentially put a target on your back, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it ends up she gave the position to a captain.
Mm-hmm.
So that meant there was a captain's job open. So I tested for the captain's job. I finished first on the test.
Okay.
I went and told her, you can promote me for this one. But she didn't.
Yeah.
She gave it to a sergeant. Now there was a sergeant's position open.
You got there eventually.
So I tested for sergeant and finished first on the test. And this time this police chief was the one that was going to make the final decision on this one.
Right.
And even going into the interview, the word around the police station was I was going to be the sergeant.
Okay.
I had already proven myself based on my time already there and how well I did on the other 2 tests. So I became a sergeant after 10 months on the job in that town.
So first test was for which position?
Captain.
Yeah.
It was captain, lieutenant, and then sergeant.
Gotcha. Okay. Just want to keep that in row. You test well, it sounds like.
I test well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm pretty good at testing.
How'd you get from Nebraska to Iowa then? I mean, not that we're that far away, but Hastings, like you said, is.
Yeah, it's 300 miles away.
Yeah.
Well, what happened there is I worked for 3 different chiefs in my tenure in Nebraska.
Okay.
And the final chief came in, and he took me under his wing, and was a mentor to me.
Okay.
And he was able to get me to go to what's known as the FBI National Academy, which is an advanced management school for law enforcement. It's a 10-week program held at the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia.
Okay.
you have to be nominated to go. After being nominated, you have to go through a rigorous background process in order to be accepted. And then even after all that was done, it took me 2.5 or 3 years before I got to actually go.
Okay.
It's a 10-week program. I got through the program, graduated, came back to Nebraska, and I'd been back a couple days when the chief called me in his office and said, "Time for you to leave." He said, "Let's work on your resume. Let's work on."
That's how he's gonna fire you.
He said, "Let's work on your resume. Let's work on your interview skills. You need to be a chief somewhere." So I did exactly what he told me to do, and we worked on my resume, and I started sending out looking for a chief's job, and I got an offer of interest from Boone, Iowa.
Okay.
And coincidentally, I had gone to the National Academy with someone that had grown up in Boone. So I had a conversation with him about things and found out some interesting information about the community. Came out and tested at the Boone Police Department, and they ended up getting the job. So I was named as the chief of police in Boone, Iowa.
What year was that?
That would have been 2003.
03. Shortly after that, Harv Spofka retires down at Knoxville.
Yeah, well, I had some issues there. In my opinion,
Okay.
one of the reasons they hired me in Boone was to come in and make some changes. I made those changes. Some of them were not very popular.
It
And
happened.
after I made the changes, it was time for me to leave.
Right.
So I ended up leaving there a little quicker than I expected to. But Harv was one of my mentors. When I came to Iowa, I met Harv early on.
Sure.
Had ongoing conversation with him. So when he decided to leave and retire as police chief in Knoxville, I applied.
Right.
And fortunately for me, I got the job.
I remember his recommendation for you too. I mean, Harv went to bat for you all the way.
Yeah. I'd like to think it was a good decision.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're here. I mean,
I'm
you know,
here.
since 05 now. So
15 years later, I'm still sitting here in this chair.
yeah.
And it was a good thing for me. And I think I was a good fit for Knoxville. It agreed with my style. And the employees that I've been working with had the great pleasure of working with. Accepted things I wanted to do, and the few times we butted heads, we were able to work it out.
You know, I just timeline this thing. Let's go back a couple more years and come back to Knoxville. But you essentially went through Quantico just about the same time, or maybe shortly after 9/11.
I was there on the anniversary date of 9/11.
Yeah, the first year.
First year.
Yeah.
I graduated from the FBI Academy on September 13th, the year after 9/11.
Right.
So it was a very emotional time in the D.C. area, as you can imagine.
Emotional, and was it still tense? I mean, because I remember the first few months after 9/11. I mean, everything was just really tense.
It was quite different. I'd been in D.C. many times
Right.
as a young person, and going back for Quantico when I was there and going into D.C. was a much different town, and people were a lot more on edge. It seemed there wasn't as much enjoyment in the air.
Right.
Things were a lot tougher to do, and people were being scrutinized a lot more than they had been when I'd been there as a kid.
Okay. Fast forward back to Knoxville again. You come in here as chief. Things are a little bit different around here.
Yeah, they were quite different.
Yeah.
I came in, and first thing I did was meet with everybody and talk to them, find out what their needs and wants were.
Right.
And then I started making some small changes in how we did business. The biggest changes I think I've seen in my career are the technology changes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking computers and things of that nature. I'm also talking simple things like our uniforms. We used to wear nylon uniforms that used to snag and get messy and couldn't get too close to a fire or they'd melt.
Right.
Now we're using some high-tech fabrics that are much more durable, and we don't have to worry about they're coated with Teflon, or so the water beads off and the stains don't get on them, things like that.
Right.
But we also went from writing reports in cars or in the station with pencils and pens to having computers in our cars now.
Right. Went from cars to SUVs too. I mean, just in the last 15 years.
Cars, SUVs, we're an all SUV fleet now.
Right.
We got a little bit more room. We upgraded technology as far as we started carrying tasers. We were one of the first.
Oh yeah, I remember the tasers.
We were one of the first states in this, or first departments in the state of Iowa to issue body cameras.
Mm-hmm.
We all have body cameras now. We've changed our weapons policy, what weapons people could carry, and a lot of things like that, all aimed at improving officer safety. We've also gotten a group of officers in that are very involved in the community. I'm thinking about, we do the ice cream with a cop at the end of the summer. We do helmets and hot dogs at the beginning of the summer. We do some other community events that are well attended. It's a lot of fun.
One of the things I've always known about you is you're a budget guy, but you get your budget done like in the fall rather than wait until the last minute. With city councils, and you've been through a lot of city council members, not because of you, but just because of the generations and then everybody changing the positions of that, how tough is it to change the things you've done? 'Cause like I said, you went from cars. I remember you ordered a pickup one time, and I didn't know how well that went across. I mean, it was like, are you nuts? What do you need a pickup for? Or how was it?
Well, I'm a smart enough person to know that I have to rationalize why I'm making these changes.
Mm-hmm.
When I wanted to go to the SUV, the first SUV we bought, first Tahoe, it cost a lot bit more money.
Sure.
But I had the studies behind me to show that the cost of ownership was much less than the cars we were buying, because at the end of their life cycle, they were worth more money as a trade-in.
Resale value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that made sense there. And also, the weather we were having at the time justified the need for four-wheel drive.
Right.
So the original idea was to have one SUV, one car, half the fleet SUVs and half the fleet cars. But then since everyone's buying SUVs, they stopped making police cars. It's very difficult to find a police car for law enforcement now, other than the Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to drive Chargers in city limits.
Right.
They're great cars for highway use and things of that nature, but they don't really work well in town. So it ends up now that we are an all SUV fleet because that's what's available, and it's done us well.
One of the things I've noticed about your style is two things. I want to talk about the way you interview to hire, because I thought that was unique. You go into their home, besides having them come and do all their testing and everything. One of your procedures is, I'm coming to your house.
Yeah, I don't do it myself anymore, but
okay.
I do have a lieutenant now that's doing the background investigation, and we ask him to do an in-home interview. And we ask that family members be present during the in-home interview, because we wanted to ensure that the family's on board. There's a lot of stress in law enforcement, as you can imagine.
Right.
And unfortunately, there's a lot of marital discord. So we want to make sure when you're going into the job that your family backs you on it. If I actually worked with someone that got hired as a police officer whose wife said, I'm not going to stick with you if you come here.
Wow.
And they hired him, and sure enough, he was, after about 18 months there, he quit because it was the job or his wife.
Right.
So I don't want that to happen. I don't want to waste the time and resources on those kind of things.
What's it cost to do the training and for the transformation and everything? Ballpark.
$10,000.
$10,000. Just to get him started on the door.
And that doesn't include the fact that we're paying his salary
right.
for almost 9 months before we're able to use him. Because once we hire someone, we have to send him to the academy for 14 weeks. And we have a 12-week or so field training time where he rides with a certified field training officer or a senior officer that teaches him how to do things. The academy is great for teaching you the theories.
Right.
And they teach you how it's done at an upper level. When you come back to Knoxville, though, as a police officer, we want to teach you how Knoxville does it.
Right.
We fill out our forms this way. These are our expectations. And that takes about another 12 to 14 weeks. So there's almost 9 months right there that you're going to be in training before we even get you ready to answer your first call by yourself.
As soon as you got out of college, you start out in Liberal, you end up in Hastings, you go to Boone, you end up in Knoxville. What is the difference between, Liberal is the easy one, what's the difference between Knoxville, Iowa and Hastings, Nebraska, as far as the community itself, as far as the safety procedures that you've implemented over the last 15 years?
Well, what I learned in those other communities has moved forward to what I'm doing here now.
Mm-hmm.
All those communities were relatively safe communities.
Right.
But officer safety is officer safety.
Sure.
So things progressed. I looked at how things were being done in a couple of the communities and said, you're overlooking this safety risk. And sometimes by safety risk, I'm not talking a risk of physical pain. I'm talking maybe monetary risk that
right.
doing something that's going to get you sued. So I looked at those practices and I tried to modify things so that they were better in line with best practices.
You made your announcement you're going to retire.
Yay.
Yay. Don't see so enthused about this. I mean, come on. You going to miss it?
Of course I'm going to miss it.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing I'm going to miss is, in a good way, is not gaining 27 pounds every morning when I go to work. I have 27 pounds of gear on.
Yeah.
Between my duty belt, my vest.
I was going to make a donut joke there, but I left it alone. So.
You know that I don't.
I know.
Everyone knows I don't eat donuts in uniform. I love donuts, but you will never see me eat one in uniform. I just hate to live up to the stereotype.
Maybe your last day.
It's a possibility.
Yeah.
It's a possibility. It's just one of those quirks I have.
Plans on afterwards? I mean, are you going to stay involved in community effort, law enforcement of any type? I mean,
when my father retired from pharmaceutical, he was in pharmaceutical research. He was offered a golden parachute, so he left early.
Mm-hmm.
And he was immediately approached by several of his colleagues, and they all wanted him to either join their company as a consultant or form his own consulting company.
Right.
And my father's response was, why would I want to do that? I just finished doing that. If I go back to work, I'm going to go to work at Home Depot where I get a discount.
I love it.
So I kind of like that idea.
Yeah.
I will always be involved, or I will always keep track of what's going on in law enforcement. But if I get another job, it's not going to be in law enforcement.
Right.
I might help out if somebody calls and says they need somebody to sit on a panel for an interview for a promotion or a hiring. I don't mind doing that kind of thing. I'm not going to get back into the day-to-day law enforcement stuff. It's time for me to find something else that interests me.
Are you helping out with the picking of the new chief at all? Ooh, a trick question for you, huh?
It's a trick question.
Yeah.
I am helping out a little bit
right.
in that I am providing information.
Okay.
I have not been told or asked to be part of interviews or anything of that nature.
Sure.
But that's still some weeks away from happening. That could change. I may be asked to, and I might not be asked to. It doesn't affect me either way.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand wanting me to look at some things because I have some expertise that might be helpful, but I also understand them not wanting me to look at things because I have some inside information about things that are going on in the department.
Right.
And if we have a candidate from another area that has an idea of doing something a certain way that I've never done it before, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah.
Or is that just a different thing?
Right.
So maybe it's best I stay out of that kind of decision process. I'd love to meet the candidates and at least be able to shake their hands or bump their elbows now, I guess.
Well, you're going to have to meet up to them sooner or later once they hire them, too, because you got to do the transition. Plus, they're working with your budget next year.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
well,
yeah.
No, I'm going to be. The timetable the city has set up means that I will probably be gone before the new one comes in.
Really?
Yeah. It's not a quick process. It's a 90-day plus process to get a suitable candidate.
I would imagine latest events are going to kind of interfere with that, too.
And I think that's part of it, too. I think that it's going to delay process, especially if you're looking at candidates from out of the area. There are certain departments where they might be currently employed that have travel restrictions.
Sure.
If they can, or if they choose to travel outside of their area where they're living or where they're working, they may be faced with some quarantines when they get back home, and some might not want to do that, or they might be told right off the top that they're not being permitted to leave the area if they want to keep their job. And I don't think you should quit your job before you have a new one.
Exactly right. One of the reasons I started this show is because I want people to try out Knoxville, move to Knoxville, start a business in Knoxville. You've been here for 15 years, and it sounds to me like you're sticking around a little bit here, too.
I'm sticking around.
Yeah.
No, my original plan was to be here 5.
Right.
And I expected to move on. I liked it here.
Right.
The community really was opening, and it fit my style. I like the fact that people wave at you everywhere you go, and they wave at you with all their fingers instead of just one.
Agreed. And to be honest with you, you are still in the middle of the country, and knowing how your driving style is, not that you drive fast, but you don't stop driving, you just drive all night, you can still be the East Coast tomorrow.
Yeah, and I've done that many a time.
Yeah.
Except now with Caprice as my girlfriend, we tend to spend the night somewhere because she doesn't like driving through the night. which is okay.
It does. You know, she's as one of my friends says, you've been domesticated.
I believe that's probably true, and I blame her for that.
That's all right. Nothing wrong with that.
No.
Folks still doing okay?
Everybody's doing well. Both my parents are healthy at this time. They all live in North Carolina now. My brother, as I said, he's also in North Carolina, and my sister is in North Carolina. So all my siblings and parents are within 30 or 40 miles of each other in North Carolina.
You're on the right side of the Mississippi still.
Where I need to be.
Yeah.
I also have 3 kids.
Right.
My youngest is a car mechanic in Central Virginia. My oldest is married, and she has 2 grandsons that she has blessed me with. Lives in Central Virginia. Then my middle child, I don't know how this happened, but he's married. He and his wife are expecting their first child.
Okay.
He works for MIT. His wife works for Harvard, and they live in Boston.
Wow.
I don't know how it happened.
It skipped a generation, maybe.
or 2 or 3.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, though.
But yeah, so they're up there, and all of them are healthy at this time and doing well. My 2 grandsons are great when I get to spend time with them.
Right.
They're a lot of fun.
Grandkids are cool, aren't they?
Yeah, and that's one of the things when I do retire, I hope to be able to go out and spend some more time with them.
Right.
And when my other grandchild is born, be able to go up there shortly after birth and find out what the new one's like.
Do some spoiling.
That's the idea of what grandparents do, isn't it?
That's awesome. Chief, appreciate your service for 15 years in Knoxville, your service your whole career, really, but especially the last 15 years here. It's been a pleasure getting to know you.
I appreciate you, Mike. We've worked together on a lot of projects over the years, and good to be working with you, and it's good to see you doing so well out here.
Maybe we'll get together after you get done, and we'll have that donut.
Maybe we can do that.
I haven't had a donut for over 3 years, though, so, you know, it's one of those things.
I can't say it's been that long for me. It's just been longer than that in uniform.
You doing any special dishes for your final day? Because, I mean, you're a chef, too. I mean, I know that.
You know, I have to laugh. The other day, senior City Hall staff stopped me and said, "What are you making?"
Sure.
You got to make something. I said, you know, I'll tell you what, you tell me what you want, and we can do chicken and noodles, we can do lasagna, we can do chili, we can do whatever you want. Have some fun with it.
And they all went yes to every one you talked about.
Actually, they did.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mike.
This was another edition of Try Knoxville. Again, we invite everybody to try out Knoxville. I know things are kind of crazy right now in the world, but you know what? We're right here in the middle of Iowa. Things are going great. I want to thank Dan Lasada one more time for his service and for coming in today's show. We'll see y'all guys. We got another week left, I guess, before we see you again. So everybody be safe.